that's the average utility you would get behind the veil of ignorance. These are the policies that anyone would choose before knowing who they are. Another way to think about this, which Adam Smith suggested, was that the policy in terms of the distribution of wealth should be determined by an impartial outsider, by someone who doesn't already know who they are, right? Or just by someone who's outside of the society, someone who's never affected by any of the policies and who can look at it in a dispassionate way. Okay, so that's what the utilitarian framework says. It says we should maximize average utility. Another way of putting this, famously by Jeremy Bentham, was that we should try to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And the way that this is usually formalized is we think of individuals as having an income and a utility that depends on that income, and then also on a bunch of other things in their life, like how much leisure they have, how enjoyable their work is, how much their identity is respected, all sorts of things like that. And then the utilitarian just seeks to maximize the sum of individual welfares. That is the integral overall people of their utility of income plus the value they get from everything else integrated with respect to their income. And everyone receives an equal weight because you don't know who you're going to be. You're equally likely to be any person. And inequality is, from that perspective, really just another form of inefficiency. Yeah, go ahead.
Where does the F of I term come?
That's just how many people earn that income.
Oh.
This should be capitalized. Sorry. Oh, no, sorry. No, this is F of the little I, because this is the how many people of that type there are. Right? So we're integrating with respect to all the different types of people that there are, the income that they earn, and the value they get. Yeah?
You mentioned in the course note that we just kind of like ignore the leisure term of that, or the VMX part of that,
Yeah.
the envelope theorem. What exactly is that?
What's the envelope theorem?
Yeah.
It says that when someone is optimizing, and we do something that impacts their welfare, we can ignore all of the indirect effects from the changes in behavior they do. So, like, imagine that I put a tax on a good that you're purchasing. How much that hurts you is the amount of the tax times how much of the good you're purchasing. We can ignore the fact that you might change how much you purchase as a result of the tax. Because basically the indirect effect always has no effect on your utility, because the optimality condition is that the derivative of your welfare with respect to that choice is zero. Right?
But isn't the indirect impact, like in the real world, affecting other people?
Yes, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about the impact of your leisure on other people, but in terms of the impact on yourself, we'll ignore that. Okay. So basically, inequality is really just a form of inefficiency. It's that we're giving more money to people who don't create as much value using that money, right? It's basically a failure to provide insurance that people would have a demand for, right? Okay. And the reason why the rich value the money less than the poor is risk aversion. That is concave utility of wealth. And the idea behind that is that as you get wealthier, you run out of good uses for your money, right? So if you move from having no money to having a little bit of money, you're going to buy yourself food to avoid starving. Then as you get a bit more, you'll have a house so that you don't have to be homeless. As you get a bit more, you'll heat the house, and you'll get health care so you can stay alive for longer and so forth. But as you get more money, you start spending it on just fancier clothes or fancier dinners, which give you some benefit, but not nearly as much as the initial things that you get, right? And this is exactly why people want insurance, because they know that they don't want to end up destitute. They know that's really bad. But does anyone here think that they're risk neutral and not risk averse? Does anyone want to play my little punching bag? Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, good. Oh no, I'm gonna call on someone. That's okay. That's okay. So imagine that that he thinks he's risk averse. I'm gonna try to persuade you that you're not risk averse. I'll come back to you later. Okay. So let's consider the following situation. Let's flip a coin, right? If it comes up tails, you'll get $2. If it comes up heads, let's flip the coin again. If it comes up tails, you'll get $4. If it comes up heads, we'll flip the coin again. If it comes up tails, you'll get $8. If it comes up heads, we'll flip it again. If it comes up tails, you'll get $16. If it comes heads, we'll flip it again, etc., right? It doubles each time the amount that you get if it comes up tails. So, repaying?
Yes.
How much would you be willing to pay? Or you're Leo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Leo, how much would you be willing to pay for this bet?
This bet.
For this thing? How much would you pay me to give you, $2 if it comes up tails, $4 if it comes up tails on the second time, $8 if it comes up tails on the third time, and so forth?
I'd be willing to pay you $2 because.
That's it. You've got to be willing to pay more than that. You're going to get at least $2. You might get $4, right? And you might get $8. So you've got to be willing to pay more than $2, right?
But every single time I go through each coin, I have less and less chance of getting more money.
No, you don't. So, okay, how much would you be willing to pay for exactly what I just described, which is I flip a coin, if it comes up tails, you get $2, if it comes up heads, I flip it again. You don't have to pay anything again at that point. If it comes up, heads, I flip it again, if it comes up tails, I pay $4, you $4, right? If it comes, how much would you pay for that whole stream of things? $50? Yeah. How much would you pay?
Everything that I got.
everything you have.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you get 1/2 chance of getting $2, and then 1/4 chance of getting $4, and then 1/8 chance of getting $8. So then it's just if it goes on forever, then you get.
So you just basically answered Vrushank's question for him. But Vrushank, how much would a risk neutral person be willing to pay for this?
Just how many times you're flipping it, so if it's forever infinity.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be willing to pay an infinite amount, right? Okay, so that's because 1/2 times 2 plus 1/4 times 4, etc. is infinity. So apparently nobody here is risk neutral unless someone genuinely would be willing to pay everything they have for this bet, right? And it's hard to imagine anyone paying more than a couple hundred or maybe a few $1,000s for this bet, right? Everybody seems to be risk neutral. So what that says is it seems very strongly compelling that everybody is risk neutral. And therefore that if we want to maximize average utility, we should definitely redistribute some from the rich to the poor, right? Okay. So, but this was just trying to convince you that you're somewhat risk neutral. The question is, how risk averse exactly are you, right? And one simple way to think about this has enormous amount of empirical support behind it, which is log utility. So people's utility of their income is just the logarithm of the utility. And this is very intuitive. So it says that if you move from earning $10,000 to earning $20,000, that makes you feel as much better as if you move from earning $1 million to earning $2 million. Or if you move from earning $4 million to $8 million. So the same percent increase in your wealth always increases your well-being by the same amount. Mathematically, it's extremely convenient, as we're going to see below, and it has a lot of empirical support behind it. So the most striking example of this comes from data from Dan Sachs and co-authors very recently. And what they did is they looked at what's called subjective well-being data. This is where a surveyor goes around and asks a bunch of people how much, they ask them the following question. On a ladder of life, from 0 being the worst life you can imagine yourself leading, to 10 being the best life you can imagine yourself leading, where would you put yourself? And let's call what people respond to that H, and let's call their income I. And then what they find is that the following equation fits extremely well. H equals 0.35 log I plus epsilon. It fits almost as well as Zipf's law does, as I'll show you on the next graph. Yeah, take this.
Is it what they want to be or what they think they are?
No, what they think they currently are. Okay. And so here's the graph. This is an amazing graph. Again, this is another example like the Zipf's law. If you ever in your research get a graph like this, you're going to get a very good grade on your senior thesis. So, so what they did here is they took 190 countries in the world. In each country, they ran a regression within the country to figure out what the relationship between income and happiness was, this notion of happiness. And the lines associated with each country is the regression line within the country. Then they ran a regression line across all the countries. And as you'll notice, all the lines in the country basically have the same slope, and they basically have the same slope as the line that's across countries. So whether you look within countries or across countries or over time, no matter how you cut it, this basic relationship that H equals 0.35 log I seems to fit extremely well. Yeah, Aversion.
What's the one? This is just random plots.
That's just random. This is just like, look, people in Brazil are really happy, I don't know where it is, compared to their income, and people in Scandinavia are really unhappy relative to their income. But that's probably because of the weather in both places. Okay, so that means that we're going to assume from now on that people's utility is the logarithm of their income. And designing a tax system involves a whole range of issues, and we're only going to think about a few of them today, but I'm just going to mention some of them. So one is designing how much income tax we should have, how much consumption tax we should have, how much of a tax we should have on capital income. If you're Herman Cain, that's 999. But for the rest of us, it's something that you actually have to think about what the right mixture of it is, right? Another thing is, how do we actually redistribute all the money that we collect through the tax system? Do we use education? Do we just send people checks? Do we have welfare, etc.? Another thing is, how many deductions should we have? What should the tax base be? Should we have some targeted deductions to different types of people, or somehow uniform things across the population? Should we have inheritance taxes? Or how do we deal with intergenerational issues? How many tax brackets should we be, and at what income should they cut? How should the administrative process of the tax system work? What programs should the government spend on? Should there be subsidies for working at low incomes, like the earned income tax credit? So all of these are super important issues, but if you look at sort of the news recently, and also at the agenda within economics, the biggest focus has been on overall, what should the level of taxes be? How much taxes should we have, right? And second, should the super rich pay some extra amount of taxes, right? That's sort of been the biggest issues in the public debate. Those can be summarized into sort of what is the overall tax rate, and should it be progressive? Should at the very top people be paying a higher tax rate? Those are the two issues that I'm going to try to help you think about how we can use economic analysis, and particularly monopoly theory. As you'll see, the analysis is very similar to monopoly theory to determine. Okay, so Maria, why, if we believe that the rich don't value their money as much as the poor, don't we just make everything perfectly equal? Why don't we just take all the money away from the rich and give it all to the